G'day, ajmahari here. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back. It's good to see you again. Where are you? Okay, there you are. Yeah, see ya. Okay. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about, the splitting cycles, idealization and devaluation. What happens initially in relationships, for each person that's in a relationship with somebody with BPD, each person is different, and how they idealized you in the beginning, similar things, but it could be somewhat different from another person. And what their cycling is going to be like in terms of how long is the honeymoon phase going to last. That varies with individual people with BPD. When is the first split to devalue going to happen? And sometimes it happens in the dating. Sometimes it really happens in the dating. They'll split and devalue you, and you don't know what's going on, and then eventually you work, you talk it over, you go around a jade conversation, whatever the case, but you move on, and you're still happy to be with the person because you don't have a clue what BPD is, and why would you? And so the thing is that things start out differently in that regard, that it can take longer for some people with BPD to really get into that really big split of devaluation. That's major devaluation, as opposed to they can ebb and flow up and down a little bit from, kind of dropping out of idealization, kind of getting into devaluation split, but not necessarily always in the classic ways in which people describe that it's all or nothing. Sometimes it's just not that big a deal, but they'll be a little distant, even if they're, acting out borderline as opposed to quiet, either of them. They can still sometimes just be a little bit withdrawn or a little bit quiet, kind of distant, kind of staring off into space, kind of there with you, but not really there with you at all. That can happen too. But in the idealization and devaluation splitting cycles, for people with BPD with relationships that are ongoing, because not all people with BPD ghost, they don't, not all of them, they just don't. So it's not accurate to say, well, all people with BPD are going to ghost, all people with BPD are going to, but these cycles, okay, so when you are with somebody who will break the connection or end the relationship off and on, whether they just say, hey, I don't want to see you anymore, or I need time, or I think it's going to be a couple weeks or a couple months before I really want to talk to you again, or something like that, or they might just ghost without saying anything, right? But then, you're in that position, right? And you're like, gotta get that person back. Like so many people are for the longest period of time. No judgment intended. And the next thing you know, they come back and they hoover. And they might cry and they might apologize and they'll promise you the moon. And that they'll go to therapy and all kinds of things. And that they've learned things and that they've changed. And then, that settles in for however long the cycle is with each different person with BPD. It could be an hour, it could be 5 hours, it could be half a day, it could be 2 days, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks. And then the next thing you know, boom, triggered again, split, devalue, ghost, or the relationship's off again. And you will see many people out there who are partners of people with BPD, and I've worked with so many over the last 30 years, they will get the patterns. They'll see the patterns. They'll start to see. You can kind of really watch and know when the person with BPD that you're close to in your life, especially in a significant other relationship, when they start to split. People can almost predict it by the cycles, because each person with BPD has their own kind of cycling pattern. And not all with BPD are so predictable, but there are many that have very predictable patterns of cycling and devaluation. And after devaluation, do they really get back to re-idealizing you? No. Like each and every time, especially in on and off relationships too, each and every time the devaluation split to ghost, to hoover back, or you hoover them back, or just an on and off again thing, right? That happens many, many times over. Each time they come back saying, they've changed, something's new, they get it now, they're sorry. Well, they don't get back to idealizing you. You don't get the person that you met back. You're like, where is that person? You're still looking for the person who you thought they were when you fell in love with them. And the key thing about this, and again, I have other videos on this, talk more in depth about it on the channel if you want to look up inside idealization. What's that all about? How the splitting cycle ends. Devaluation, being ghosted by a person with BPD. So many videos on the channel here. And the thing is, I just wanted to say in this video, to make it clear that these cycles will, each and every time there's an on-off cycle, so a devaluation split, and whether they leave or they just don't talk to you for a while, or they ghost you, break up, come back, whatever their pattern is. And they're not all the same, because sometimes a person with BPD will do a devaluation split, will be the final devaluation split, and they won't hoover you again. They're not all the same. But the point is, it's key to know here is that the cycles speed up. Each and every time you go around one of these cycles of on and off again and they come back, then they're going to get into devaluation. They're not going to really re-idealize you. And they're going to get into a split devalue again more quickly each time. And the cycles go around very quickly. And so people that are in these on-off again type of relationships with somebody with BPD, and they're splitting and they're idealizing and devaluing, and they keep coming back, and you keep letting them come back, and people do this sometimes 10, 12, 14, 20 times, seriously. And sometimes in short periods of time, this happens. And then what happens is every time they come back, they're going to devalue faster and more strongly probably, and they're going to ghost or whatever their pattern is, break up with you, and they might start to take longer to come back around the cycle to you hoover them or they hoover you, or however that works in the pattern with the person with you that's in your life with BPD. So these cycles will speed up, and there will be less time that is anything like what you'd hoped for, less positive time, more devaluation, more chaos, more drama, whatever that looks like for however the person with BPD manifests it with, that in your life manifests it. So the on-off again is like what I talked about in a video of mine, that I don't know what it's called, but it's called, like there's a subtitle. But if you just look for the thumbnail, it says closer and closer apart. This is what's happening in this cycle, right? The on and off again relationships, and around and around and around you go. The cycle is speeding up. The devaluation is happening more. The devaluation is getting stronger and stronger for the person with BPD, and they can't get back to re-idealization, and they're just putting you through. It's like being in the spin cycle forever of like a dryer or something. They're just putting you through the ringer. And maybe I should have said washing machine. Old washing machines, ringers, never mind. So thing is with that when they will come, there will come the time when they get to that final. They won't even know what it is, but the final devaluation split, and the cycle stops. So each time the cycle goes around, like I've said in another video of mine where I talk about this and more, they're going to, each time they come back, each time you try, and it looks okay until all of a sudden devaluation split and off again and on again. You're getting closer and closer apart. And by that I mean, each cycle is bringing you back together, closer for briefer and briefer times, because it's going to bring you closer and closer apart, meaning you're getting closer to being apart. You're getting closer to a final ghosting. And the person with BPD doesn't know this, but they're doing the best they can. But by the on-off again and the cycle speeding up and the devaluation split coming faster and faster, they're getting to a point where like there is no re-idealization, and they're just getting engulfed faster. And some people with BPD have more engulfment fear than abandonment fear. And so when this happens, if you let this go on, and I have so many clients that I'm working with now and I've worked with over 30 years where this happens, and people have a greater impact. It impacts you in way more negative ways that causes so much pain, even more so than just, trying a relationship with somebody with BP and then it ends, and that's really painful. So this cycling around and around with the on and off again relationships, I have another video on that. It's probably called On and Off Relationships. So if you're new to the channel, or you're just watching this video, check out what's here. There's a lot. It's very in-depth, it's very accurate, and it comes from a place I know. I am sitting in a unique position. Other people may claim things like that, but I had BPD. I fully recovered 30 years ago, and I've had 2 exes with BPD and a BPD and PDX, and then I've had healthy relationships in between, and again now. And so the thing about that is, I know what it's like to walk in your shoes. I haven't been in those sort of on-off type of things. Maybe once or twice that happened with a quiet BPD ex of mine. But so I'm not just sitting here as somebody who happens to be an expert in this, and I do counsel people, etc. But I also have your lived experience, and I have the lived experience on the other side of BPD, like having had it, recovered from it fully 30 years ago, like I said. But also, I know what it's like to be in your shoes in, trying to love somebody with BPD, and how painful that really is. So I hope this was a little bit helpful, or gave you some food for thought, because if you're in an on and off again cycle, or you're wondering if they're trying to hoover you back and you still really haven't moved on, and you kind of are having trouble keeping no contact, or you didn't get to full no contact, and you can't stop thinking about them. And a lot of people are teetering on that probably every day. Like, should I contact them back? Oh, they contacted me. Should I message them back? And it's really difficult choices to make. And I would just say that the more times you go around, the more you're being stressed, you're being hurt. Every time they ghost, split and devalue you, or do whatever they do. Some ghost, some break up, some stay away for a while. They won't answer your messages. They won't tell you what's wrong. They just disappear. They just go silent on you. And that is often what the quiet borderline will do. But it can happen also with an acting out borderline if they get into the same split devalue, and they might ghost. But not everybody with BPD does ghost. But if you're in that kind of a situation, really got to understand, you never really get back to the idealization of the honeymoon phase. You never really see that person again. The person that you fell in love with, the person that you're in pursuit of, the person that you want to get back, the person that also represents something to your inner child subconsciously in you about a parent and why it is that you have codependency, because the seeds of codependency are sown in childhood, and they are the result of an adverse childhood experience. Might be rejection, might be abandonment, might be a shame wound. You don't even have to have really abusive parents to incur one of these type of wounds. And then the pattern of codependent relating. Codependent relational patterns mixed with BPD relational patterns. It's kind of dysfunction to different degrees in different ways on both sides. So this on again, off again, this cycling back and forth, you're not really going to get to honeymoon phase again. And the cycles speed up, and you're getting closer and closer apart. Closer and closer to being apart. Closer and closer to the final heartbreak, because you might have had many along the way around the cycles. They speed up, and there's going to come that final discard, and you won't be able to hear. They won't answer you back. They'll just be gone. Happens in so many cases. And so I hope that was, like I said, food for thought or helpful, but it's just really to give you the message that, these cycles are not going to lead you anywhere that you hope. You're not going to find that person again, because they don't really exist, the one that you fell in love with. They're not going to come back to stay. They need so much therapy. Even if they went to therapy, they can't make significant change fast enough to save a relationship. Couples counseling is a no-go. It shouldn't even be done when somebody has BPD, because they have to work on that. Person with codependency has to work on that. Couples counseling doesn't work in these situations, by and large. So the other thing I would just say really quickly is, it's really painful and really difficult, but the first time they leave and go and slam the door, you should leave the door closed. It's in your best interest. It's more difficult to do, obviously. But that pain right there that you want to avoid, so you let them come back, etc., it just exponentially increases with every time around the cycle. Cycles speed up, you're getting closer and closer to being apart, and the heartache at the end of several cycles is really greater and takes longer to recover from than the unbelievable pain of being ghosted once, going no contact, and shutting that door. Take care.